join the voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen. Hey, I know that guy. Out at Hy-Vee in Eagan on Tuesday, October 29th. Stop by from 4 to 5 p.m. to meet PA and Vikings defensive back Cam Bynum, a.k.a. Cam Beasley. Thanks to Hy-Vee and Pepsi, plus a live Q&A event to follow. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Hello, Mr. Scribe. How have you been?
I am doing well. I'm mostly recovered from the travel back from London cold, but doing well.
Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling, Goessling, if you would like to follow him via Twitter, as 9 to noon does. And Ben's inclusion for a couple of segments from the TCO radio studio each and every Tuesday is courtesy of Standard Heating and Air. Learn more at standardheating.com. Let's begin from where we were and then move up to where we are. What was fun in London for your kids?
We did, I would say there were a couple of highlights. We did the big Harry Potter studio thing on Monday after the game. We had not done that before. That was very cool, very immersive. It was like a whole day thing, and they had actors coming through the middle of the thing, and it was a lot of fun. We did a Shakespeare play at the Globe Theater, did a Comedy of Errors on Saturday night for my bookworm kids, and we did.
Did you just replay the second half of the Vikings game from an offensive standpoint to a certain extent?
It was a preview of it, I suppose. It was a lot of mistaken identity stuff. So maybe Aaron Rodgers, there's some mistaken identity with thinking he's throwing to his own receivers.
FIDA, Fairness and Darnold Act, until he hit Jefferson and Munt.
Right. Okay. So we did those things. We went through like the Portobello Market neighborhood where they, the movie Notting Hill. I'm not a big rom-com guy, but my wife loves that movie.
That movie.
So I need to see it now because I've been to the bookstore.
Julia Roberts?
Yes, the bookstore that I guess is a big plot point. I've now been to the bookstore, so I guess I got to see the movie.
Wow. It's like on a corner, right?
Yeah. Yep. So we did that.
It's a real bookstore?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That's cool.
And then during the game, kids went to Wicked on the West End. So we got a lot in.
They enjoyed it?
They did. They had a good time.
Now, Player Access was yesterday.
Yep.
And if you follow Ben on Twitter or read his stories, as I do, then you will know that several players spoke not only to Benny the Scribe, but several constituents, including Jonathan Grenard. And Ben's story today in the Star Tribune is fantastic. It's about embracing higher expectations. And once again, Star Tribune or StarTribune.com is where you can find it. And Grenard he went to deep thinking.
Yeah, he did.
And he had several quotes in that story that were just terrific. And here's one. Grenard on the 5-0 with higher expectations. Quote, "We're human. KO will have all the fire, and we're in it. We're listening to him for sure. And there's a little bit of self-doubt where it's like, hey, is he really blowing smoke, or could we really be this good?" And I feel like that's where once we get out of our mind and just play with the fire and confidence that he has in us, the staff has, the city has, man, we'll be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic quote.
Well, it was so interesting to me because, and I talked to him about this for a while afterwards when we shut the recorders off, but the belief gap, this is like a thing that I realize as a coach when I'm coaching runners, because there's so much of like this thing when you're a coach. If I think you can get to this level and right now you're here and you may not even conceive that you can get to this point, but trust me, I've seen this before. I think you can go there. And it's tricky for the sport I coach because that involves pushing yourself to a level of fatigue that you haven't probably gone to before and you may not think is possible. But for players, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah. Where
it's pushing to a level of whether fatigue or skill or execution that you think, I can't get there. And I asked Grenard later on about, what is that thing that holds you back? And some of it is kind of a perfectionism streak. Some of it is, and he talked about, everybody in here is good. Everybody has been the guy somewhere. So you're not sitting there thinking that I can just go smoke everybody. He said some guys are like that. And you want to get to that point. I think Justin Jefferson's probably thinking that way, but not everybody is. So getting to that level where you say, nobody can stop us if we do things the right way is, I think, a lot of what Kevin O'Connell is trying to get them to believe, not in an arrogant way, but in a if we just trust our process here, we can do whatever we want. So it's such an interesting psychological component of this, because athletes, even when they're at the best of the best, at the highest level, they deal with doubt just like the rest of us do. And that confidence thing is a lot of, I think, what he's trying to instill in them as they go forward here.
And that's beautiful. But the part of it where he's like, and we are trying to decipher if he's blowing smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's age old where every team at organized team activities, every single team in the NFL, then into training camp, you know, like if I don't know, the Jaguars would be an example from years gone by, but if you're bad every single year and are incrementally improving, they don't necessarily come into the initial interviews with the Goesslings from whatever newspaper or wherever and say, well, it's Super Bowl or bust.
Yes.
It generally is, they'll start with division, making playoff, but they all have those grandiose expectations.
Right.
But the smart veterans, like Grenard and others, they can read between the proverbial lines and be like, okay, I mean, well, can we just go out and practice, try to get this thing better?
Right.
And it sounds like Grenard definitely is bit in that what this guy says, we see, we touch, we feel, we see it back on film.
Yeah.
And if we continue to do it, we might go to the Super Bowl.
Well, and you hear him, the Vikings released the clip of the post-game victory speech just about every week, and he goes back a lot to, this is what we've talked about. I mean, he's kind of trying to point back to these victories as evidence of, this is all the stuff I've been saying to you since April and May, and now you're seeing it come to life.
Yeah.
So a lot of, I think, what he is doing is saying, hey, this is proof that what we are doing is working, and let's keep on this track, because if we do, this can keep up and take us to a certain place. So there's, I think, a lot of connecting dots for Kevin O'Connell in a motivational sense that is, for players that have said, yeah, come on, man, we've heard this all before, let's just go. Yeah. Like you're saying, I think he's getting through a lot of that and building legitimacy with them by, number one, winning, but number two, saying, hey, this is how all this connects.
Well, and defensively speaking, and when O'Connell's here in 45 minutes, I'm going to bring this up to him. It's, if you preach, like this would be Flores and Pettin under the guise of the head coach or under the tutelage or leadership of the head coach. So they're all together. And if you preach, hey, edge rushing guys, if you do it this way, at the bye, you'll have 20 sacks, and our edge guys will have 13 of them. So the edge guys, the chief rushers, have 13 of the 20 sacks. Okay, coach, well, what's that going to lead to? Every key member of the secondary will have at least one interception, which they do. Now, like Theo Jackson's been out there a couple of plays, so I'm putting him in the mix. Everybody has at least one interception. Bynum has multiple. And all the edge guys have at least one. Dallas Turner one, up to Patrick Jones with 5. So that's the, is he blowing smoke here? Yeah. Well, no, there it is. You rush this way, you stay disciplined. Look what happens. The ball gets thrown to our guys.
Now, as part of that, you hit it. I think the difference between the Jaguars it's really a difference of execution. I mean, every team's going to preach that their system will work. If you're a 1-5 team, you're going back, you're saying, because we didn't execute, this is why we're 1-5. But think about like Sam Darnold. Let's take it on the other side of the ball.
Sure.
When it comes to trusting the process, this is a guy that has spent up till now his time in spots where there's been a lot less execution, and it's been a lot more looking back and going, if we would have done this, if we would have trusted the process, we would have had success on this play. I think if you're Grenard and you have that belief and you have that trust and that's permeating throughout the roster, I think Sam Darnold through 5 would be a great example to look to, and Kevin O'Connell can say, see, when you trust the process, good things happen. This guy's got an 11 touchdown, 4 interception ratio, and he's playing the best football of his career. Trust me, and we will go forward together.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think O'Connell has certainly spent a lot of time making sure his messaging is consistent and that there are themes in it, because you hear him talk all the time, and he talks with you guys about this, with intent of plays. We are trying to do this because we see this in a defense, and if we go this way, this will cause them to break their rules, or we will take advantage of their rules, and it will allow for us to get a big play. Okay, then now here are the details of how that comes together. Then you do it, and then you tie back to, see, this is why we did this. This is how it worked. let's go do it again. There are themes, I think, through a lot of his communication with players, and it's a guy with a communications degree that I think he is mindful of a lot of those things. So I think in all of these places, you kind of see these threads come together. And when they have success, it just allows them to keep building on that.
And it's amazing you mentioned that. We can make a team break their rules or take advantage of their rules. I fall into it most of the time just as somebody that loves the team, watches all the games. I'm picturing plays drawn up like the way they would be on like a screen during a Madden game.
Yeah.
And it's just, well, this is zone, this is meant. Like, I think about it sometimes at such an elementary level.
Right.
And that's kind of the interesting part and why I get so captivated once in a while when we have guys like Kevin O'Connell in, is that there's a philosophical side to his offensive plan, and getting everyone to buy into that. It feels like it's super challenging. You got smartest guy in the room to the guy that's like, just tell me where I need to be and I'm going to make a play because I'm an elite athlete. But having all of that work together, the philosophical side of it is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And he'll talk a lot, too, about player ownership of it. And I think what he's hoping for is if you understand what we are trying to accomplish on a certain play and it breaks down, okay, well, can I find a solution that still accomplishes the intent of what we are trying to do, even if plan A is out the window for some reason? So I think a lot of that stuff it's pretty well thought out, and I think you see a lot of it connect in the way that they're playing.
How we didn't get a chance to chat with you last week, and so just a couple in reprise fashion off the Jets game.
Yeah.
Here's first and foremost. How do you feel about Darnold off the Jets game into the bye, into the final 12?
Well, I think there were some things in that game where he's missing some throws, and he's, they certainly were trying to stay aggressive with him, trying to have him push the ball downfield, but you miss a few spots there to either extend drives or get big plays that there's going to be some of that, hey, is this the old Sam Darnold coming back? You see a little bit of that online, you hear a little bit of that chatter. And I don't know that it's that, but I do think there are some things for him to clean up from that one. I think trying to play in a way that is closer to what he had been doing earlier in the season. And the Jets' corners had a really good day. I mean, they were physical with those receivers. Yep. There was a lot in that game that the Jets caused to go off schedule, and I think that played into some of that. But some of this is probably Darnold being a little more efficient. And some of it is probably receivers getting off of jams because they're probably going to see more of that. The Jets put a little bit of that template out there now and being able to protect him probably a little better than they did too.
The Jets corners, Terry and Arnold, leads the NFL in pass interference with 5.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Carlton Davis, is second with 4.
The Lions corners?
The Lions corners, thank you. So, I mean, despite having Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, and wherever they're getting their rush from, they still have those 9 pass interference calls. Yeah, that's a tricky figure. I mean, they've put it just year after year, they're putting time into that secondary, in essence, almost to find a way to get a handle on Justin Jefferson first, and then succeed and strive and thrive in the postseason. Jefferson in 8 against them,
he's killed them.
It's like on average 7-132. Yeah. His last 3, he's averaging close to 10 catches a game, 185 a game. He has 2 touchdowns of those 3 games.
Broke like the franchise regular season receiving yardage single game record.
223 in the second of 2 a couple of years ago.
Correct. Yep.
You're right. But now, this is different, obviously, because last year the Lions faced Mullins twice.
Yep.
So they're going to get O'Connell's preferred starting quarterback in Darnold, and like when they got Cousins, they generally would lose. So when O'Connell has his number 1 quarterback, he wins like 65-70% of his games.
Yeah.
Here with the Minnesota Vikings as head coach, But the Lions, with that rush, which is ballyhooed, you would think things would be better back there and there'd be fewer penalties, but they're not. It's hard to figure.
Even watching that Cowboys game on Sunday, they're still so grabby, and that's with Oruwariye playing for the Cowboys now. He had a pass interference in that game. I was like, okay, that's still the same. That's what we're used to seeing with him with the Lions. But it's still a lot of that really grabby stuff, and I expect you'll see that on Sunday. They'll try to get physical with the Vikings receivers, and certainly the Vikings do not have Calvin Johnson body types at receivers, so that is going to be the way that they get played until they show that they can handle it. And Jefferson has been played that way in the past. I think you're going to see probably a stretch of that here, but the grabbing, I'm sure, it's on tape. It's been on tape for a while, and I'm sure that pregame meeting that Kevin O'Connell has with the refs, that will probably be a topic of conversation.
But also what is fair to bring up in this equation with Jefferson just absolutely blistering them every single time he sees them, specifically with O'Connell. I mean, we got franchise records up in here. They've lost 4 of the last 5. And so, that this is not the, wow, you've lost 4 of the last 5 to the team that went 0-16 in 2008 or whatever? Got the first pick in 2009 with Matthew Stafford? No. This is a team that can go to and win the Super Bowl. They took a major hit with Aiden Hutchinson. That's the only way to look at it. That, I think they would be in the trade market, I would imagine, if their general manager's super aggressive, and there are reports that I've seen out there that Max Crosby might be available. So I immediately thought, Lions might go looking at him, and he's really, really good. But, I mean,
nobody else has more than 2.5 sacks on that team.
Really?
He was doing everything for them.
He's having a great year.
QB hits, nobody more than 5. He's got 17. Statistically, Hutchinson was having defensive player of the year type season.
Everything. Oh, you know what? With Hutchinson down, and he's young and he's tenacious and he's super tough, so he'll come back better than ever. But I wonder if this seriously makes Andrew Van Ginkel the favorite for defensive player of the year as of right now.
Well,
he has 2 touchdowns. He has to be in the mix.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because how much of that, obviously writers vote on that, so reputation and name recognition probably plays into a little bit of that, and I don't think he would be helped in that regard. But if he keeps doing this, then I would think he'd have to be in the conversation. If you match sacks with interceptions and bringing some of those back for touchdowns, it's a unique combination that is hard to find just about anywhere else.
So Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, covers the Minnesota Vikings. He's the beat writer for the Strib, covering the Minnesota Vikings. Does wonderful work with the likes of Andrew Kramer, and you can learn more at Ben Goessling via Twitter. Dalton Reisner back at practice. If you were to cast your gaze or share whatever steam you fairly can share, what do you think is next for old Dalton Reisner?
Well, he talked yesterday about he feels like he's already in football shape. He feels like he's pretty much ready to go.
I read those quotes either from you on Twitter or in a story.
Yep.
And reading between the lines, because I was not there, he seemed sour. He seemed kind of like, well, I've been fine for a while. I've been in football shape for a while. Something like that. I was like, damn, where's he going with that?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of that. And I wonder if, I don't know this for sure, but I'm trying to think of the timing of it. If he maybe thought, you know what, I didn't need to be out for as much of the regular season as I've been. But however we got here, I think he is ready to go. I would not be surprised if he's back in short order. They have that open roster spot. And then...
Oh, not back, but you mean back in the starting lineup?
I think that's a possibility.
That's aggressive.
I think there's a chance of that. If Ed Ingram struggles, I think he may end up back in there. Now, he has trained at right guard in the preseason, in training camp. He spent most of his career at left guard, so there is that switch. How does he play in that spot? How football ready is he? How much time do they want to see him kind of working before they would consider that? But I do think the fact that he was practicing at right guard in training camp is not an accident. I think
I agree.
Possibility that if Ed Ingram struggles, they make a switch there is certainly there.
But before I hit O'Connell with this in about 35 minutes, do you have any idea who the emergency long snapper is here?
I don't know off the top of my head.
We'll just stop right there. It's a Cole Kmet thing with some NFL oddities, which I'm going to lead with Kevin. Now with Reisner and this is we're talking business here, so just looking at what they've done, how they've gotten there, things that have been said that are in common thread fashion and have led to what we have seen. And if they want to get bigger and more physical in the middle of their line, you ain't replacing the center. Now, Garrett can be physical, but he's undersized, and he's really, really good in the screen game, and he's just getting things squared away. Garrett's underrated. Brandell is playing extremely well from what I understand. You too?
Yeah, for the most part. I think they've had a few kind of rough spots, but for the most part,
did you watch back the Jets game?
I haven't been back through the whole thing.
Okay.
But I've seen a little bit of the stuff where it's like, okay.
You see what I'm saying in the running game here with Blake, and maybe they just were a couple of individual things I saw, but I was like, wow, Ty looks so much like last year. Chandler just nervous and didn't burst.
Yep.
So then I went and watched back all of his carries during the bye. There were a lot of mistakes, a lot of guys in the running game that were missed. I saw a couple with Brandell, and so Ty really didn't have a fair chance to unfurl.
Yeah.
So that was kind of eye opening. But at 5-0, moving Brandell from left guard to right guard, like say they
I
were.
don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, right. They can't even be pondering that, right?
I don't think they are.
Okay.
I think if there were to be any
it
type
would just
of a
be one
switch,
for
it'd be
one.
Reisner writing room.
Right, but if I mean, again, with all due respect, Dalton is not as good in the powerhouse run game as that Ingram.
That is the trade-off, yes.
Right, and you're running the ball more than you're throwing it right now, by the way.
That's true. Yep.
So I don't think it'll finish that way.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you clearly have changed the philosophy with some things. When you have Aaron Jones specifically, it's working.
Yep.
And this guy has to be part of it.
Yeah.
Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I think, the question they would have to ask is that when they have run the ball to the right or where they're running duo stuff where you get those double team blocks in the middle, he is a big part of that because he's so physical and such a forceful presence there. So do you do that or do you say Reisner's better in pass protection? Do we go that way? So, I don't think we're headed towards any type of hybrid thing, but it is that trade-off.
I think Ingram's playing well. I mean, I'm not saying 10-10 well, but in the first game against Dexter Lawrence and those guys, there were some visible things where he got run around. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, the best we can do here. Yeah, start him. He's big, physical. We can do 7.2 things are going to work with him, but the 2.8 potentially could wreck a game. But let the Houston Texans aren't known for their defensive tackles. Yeah. So let's look at like that threesome Green Bay was going to ran at the Vikings. Yeah. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, T.J. Slayton. Yep. Ingram killed him. Yeah. I mean, Clark got him a couple of times, but Kenny's high end, as you know. But, I mean, Slayton couldn't get around him. Yeah. Wyatt had his worst game of the year. So then the next game, what do they have? Quinnen Williams and Javon Kinlaw. Yep. Okay. Might have called Quinnen Williams' name one time the whole game. Yeah. Now, Kinlaw played out of his skin. He didn't get home, but he changed a Darnold pass that led to an interception. He's tall, too. Right. The demise of Javon Kinlaw may have been greatly exaggerated. Yeah. But here's the point. Is Ingram, was part of that, and nobody was running around him. Yeah. So I just think he's getting better. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see if that continues here over the next few weeks. I mean, the Lions game, and then you go Thursday night with the Rams, and then, you kind of go from there with a easier stretch of the schedule coming up after that. Yep. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch how that all turns out. Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. You can access the newsletter, which popped this year. I think it's available on Fridays. Yes. And also access Vikings, the podcast. You can listen to Ben there, too. When we return, we will get into some more Vikings and Lions-related conversation, including a former Lion who's a current Viking, see what Ben thinks about him. But first, here's Well with the cash thing.
The Fan and two men and a junk truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword dollar at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword dollar. Enter it now at KFAN.com. Comedian and podcaster Tom Segura is hitting the road. Catch him when he brings his Come Together tour to XL Energy Center on Friday, April 18th. Don't miss out on this hilarious night of comedy. Tickets are on sale now. Get the full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Now, I know you wrote a story within the last 2 weeks about Brian Flores chatting about Andrew Van Ginkel. Yeah. And Van Ginkel, when he had him with the Miami Dolphins. So either off that story or what you've heard from Andrew or anybody, what are the secrets behind Andrew Van Ginkel's touchdowns?
Well, I think a lot of it, Flores. We got into this a little because I talked to him one-on-one before I went down to Rock Valley to do that story on Van Ginkel a couple weeks ago, and we talked a lot about what stuck out to him in the draft process in 19. He's talked a lot about his learning style, which, coaches you kind of forget that a lot of them are either have formal backgrounds in teaching or you just learn teaching methods, because that's basically what you're doing, especially at this level. You're doing that more than you're probably on the practice field. So he said we spend a lot of time going through surveys and questions with players before the draft to figure out how they learn, how they think. And he talked about Van Ginkel as a conceptual thinker quite a bit, that he understands just concepts and ideas on a large scale and kind of can add his own twist to those things, because it's not just rote memorization. It's okay, I understand the big 30,000 foot level thing of what you're trying to do here. I mean, kind of what Kevin O'Connell talks about with intent. There's a lot of that with Van Ginkel where he grasps what's happening. And then the fact that, I know, talking to his old coach down in Rock Valley, he played quarterback, he played basically every position on defense. So he sees the game, I think, in a way that's broader than, okay, my job is just to go after the quarterback, and I'm just thinking about my lane of this. It's as much as they want players to see themselves as a piece of the whole defense and what everybody's supposed to be doing. I think he does that awfully well, and he can look at formations and say, okay, this is where this is going. I mean, we've seen it with him popping a couple of those screens, and that interception against Aaron Rodgers is just saying, okay, the guard's coming to me. Rodgers is going to think his hot read is over here.
Yeah.
So I'm stepping into the throwing lane. And his ability to feel that and see what quarterbacks are doing is pretty unique. I mean, I asked Harrison Smith for that story. Have you seen anybody else do this? And he just goes, yeah, I got to think about it. But nothing's coming to mind that somebody does this at this level.
Right.
So, I mean, for a guy like that, that's been in the league 13 years, 6 Pro Bowls, to say this is pretty rare. It's a pretty high compliment.
And Van Ginkel is so unassuming. It's like, I think it was in your story, I mean, I read it this morning, Rodgers says to him in the second half, so this is a first half pick 6. Rodgers says to him in the second half on the field, I gave you an early Christmas gift.
Yep.
Christmas came early.
Yep.
Okay. 8.3 out of 10 players. F you.
Yeah.
No, I earned it.
I'm the Grinch. I just stole your Christmas. I mean, that's what you come back with.
That's brilliant. I'm the Grinch. I stole your Christmas, Aaron. Or get out of my face, old man.
Yeah.
Okay. That's wound up 8.3 out of every 10.
Yep.
What's Andrew say? Thank you.
Thank you.
It goes back to the huddle. Christmas came early for you, didn't it? Probably never has chatted with him. Thank you.
Yep.
Back to the huddle.
Yep.
That guy's unbelievable.
I mean, it's like one of 6 pick sixes in Aaron Rodgers' career or something like that.
5.
Yeah, in the first game against the Vikings
like
that he's thrown 3 picks.
Right?
Yeah. So it's a pretty small club. So you get entry to that, and you think you'd probably, most people would probably have a little more for Aaron Rodgers than just thank you, but that's what he did.
The humble of the Iowa kid. Talking last segment, talking about, teams that have rules and attacking those.
Yeah.
You ever ponder, what are Flores's rules? Because it's still, the chaos and the way the PA's framed it up, like it's a hybrid 3-4 with floaters and floaters to the nth degree once in a while with multiple safeties and Metellus playing. You ever wonder, what are the rules to a Brian Flores defense?
Well,
that's a great question.
I think it is a great question, and I think that's some of why they've been able to stay ahead of teams is that the rules, whatever they are, have not completely been found out. I do think with some of the pressures, you see them saying, okay, if the center is turning this way, that's going to maybe dictate. And I don't know this for sure. I mean, this is, my armchair guy that watches enough football just to be dangerous, but certainly is not an expert. I think a lot of times when the center is turning, they're saying, okay, this person's going to drop because what we want is the center to help in protection against nothing. We want to basically burn a guy here because they are thinking somebody's coming and then they're not there. So I think some of that goes into it. And then you see a lot of the Tampa 2 stuff where they'll get to it from weird places. But yeah, in terms of what makes them check as much as they do, because they do a lot of that. And I think that's pretty rare for defenses in this day and age to do it to the degree that they do. And then how they get to different things. That I could not decipher completely, and I think I can't remember where I saw this, but somebody saying that Rodgers a couple times was saying, oh, you're in this coverage, and Aaron Rodgers was wrong on it. So
wow.
It's like, if Aaron Rodgers is wrong on your coverage, it's like one of those hackathon things where people say, hey, we've got this new piece of software, we want to bring the best hackers in the world, try to break it, try to crack the code, tell us what we need to improve.
Have you ever seen the Cam Newton clip with Clay Matthews?
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yep.
It's
You've been watching film, huh? Okay, watch this.
right. Cam says something. Clay says something.
Yep.
Cam, what'd he say?
Well,
You've been watching film, so have we, something like
he
that.
said, that's cool. Watch this, and then I think
Ready?
throws a touchdown. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was an angle route to McCaffrey.
Yep.
Right where Matthews was.
Right.
because
Yeah.
he knew he was going to move.
Because I think Matthews said something about watch for the wheel route.
Yes.
And then Cam is just
That's
like,
so
that's
beautiful.
cool. That's great. Watch this. I'm going to throw a touchdown on you.
FIDA, Fairness in Dallas Cowboys Act. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I just saw it at ESPN.com. Jerry Jones on the radio yesterday for his weekly radio hit with Shan Sharif, RJ Choppy, and Bobby Belt. I don't know if people have heard this or read this, but I'm going to read it to you right now because it got ugly.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones says, listen, let me tell you, this is on the radio. Listen, let me tell you what I'll do about it. I will let us sit down and look at the decisions we've made over the last several years, okay? I'll look at it. Now, if you think I'm interested on a damn phone call with you over the radio and sitting here and throwing all the good out with the dishwater, you've got to be smoking something over there this morning. I'm not, and I really don't. And I don't even want our listeners listening to me talk about. This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over the reasons that I did something and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job. That's not your job. Or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions. No, I'm not kidding. What the hell is that?
That is, with
Good
all due
Lord.
respect, Jerry, that is the job of asking people. It's not necessarily to say, and I don't know the relationship between the station and him quite as well, but
Right.
the job fundamentally is not to sit here and say, you should have done this, at least in my sense as a reporter. I mean, a columnist may be a different thing, and radio is, kind of a different lane from that completely, but the job, at least from where I sit, is to say, tell me why you did this. Tell me your thinking so that when we discuss it, we can understand it and maybe appreciate something that we didn't know from your perspective. That is part of the reason you ask questions. So I would say that is very much their job.
Well, and you'd think over the course of his tenure, there's an element. Jerry Jones he likes the spotlight.
Yeah.
And there's an element of control here, right?
Most owners aren't doing radio shows after games.
No, they're not. And Jerry wants to be the guy that gets to deliver the message.
Right.
He wants to be the guy that kind of, in his own way, can kind of manipulate the general conversation around what's happening with Dallas Cowboys football.
Yep.
This tells you they're slipping. It's a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Everyone wants McCarthy fired, and as soon as Zimmer joins, it's like, well, if things go bad for McCarthy, well, obviously Zimmer can pop in.
Yeah.
The defense is super injured and not performing well at all.
No.
They tried to move on from Zeke. It got so bad in the run game they had to bring Zeke back, and it's still awful.
Yep.
Jerry Jones has no answers to any of this, and but he's still trotting his way out there, freaking out on the radio apparently. But no, it's ugly in Big D.
It is, and the thing is, like, with them, I mean, they have the 3 Super Bowls, but do we think, in terms of the people that get credit for that or the decision making for that, how much credit should Jerry Jones get for that? I mean, a lot of that is Jimmy Johnson building that team and making the trade with the Vikings, and then using all those draft picks to get all the players they got, and then you build the offense around Emmitt Smith and that offensive line and all of those things. But they haven't been to an NFC title game, I don't think, since they won that last Super Bowl in 1995.
Jeez.
So it's like, this is the 30th or 29th season since they have not been to an NFC title game. I don't think I'm missing one, because
it feels like they win 12 games every year and get killed in the first playoff game.
I think they might just have one playoff win since that time.
I mean,
as well.
that stat would win forever, that they had not won a playoff game since, I think, 96, and then they lose to, I think, the Panthers in the second round. But yeah, it is a long time, and obviously owners own teams, and they are not subject to getting fired, so there is nothing really anybody can do about it from that perspective. And I suppose that's where he can say, fine, you can hate it if you want, but I own the Cowboys, and if I'm not selling, you're stuck with me. But there is, especially if you're going to be out front as much as he is, when things are bad, and you're out front, it means you might have to deal with a little bit of turbulence in the air, so to speak.
Have a good day, Scribe. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you soon, okay?
Sounds good.
Ben Goessling, weekly 9 to noon here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Follow him at Ben Goessling via Twitter. And we thank Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com for sponsorship weekly of the Scribe. News du Nord is next, followed by Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell joining us from the TCO radio studio in Eagan, home to your Minnesota Vikings on KFAN.
We are back to feasting. Join Paul Allen and Paul Charchian this Friday at Buffalo Wild Wings in Monticello for the Friday Football Feast. Drop in for great wings and drinks, nonstop football talk, plus tons of prizes. Doors open at 8 a.m. Get the full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Minutes from now, Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell joins 9 to noon for the X's and O's portion of the equation. Pete Bursich, the analyst for the Vikings radio network, just ran into him in the hallways here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Right after O'Connell is done with us, he's going to record a film breakdown with Pete Bursich, which will be, Curly, is the film available later today or tomorrow? Later today. Vikings.com. So those Bursich and O'Connell film bits, you saw a ton last year due to scheduling and stuff. They're not doing as many this year. But when they do them, holy cow, they're fantastic. It's a Curly Harris production. Vikings.com for that coming up a little later today. Yeah, Curly, Jesse, and the rest of the Vikings Entertainment Network, they all put it together. So that's cool. Good seeing Pete, good seeing Nordo, and good hearing News du Nord.
Yeah, News du Nord is brought to you by The Casino, not a casino, The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com for event details. Live racing? Well, that season is over, but you're always feeling the felt at Canterbury. Poker, blackjack, and table games. You're having sips at Chips. Check Derek Allen's schedule. Buy a beer from him and tip him nicely. And then NFL Pickup every Thursday. Get that free MVP card and make your NFL selections. You can win hundreds of dollars. So just go to Canterbury. Best place in Shakopee. Let's start here. Best place for Davante Adams might be New York, PA. And there's a hamstring thing. He was kind of off the field for a couple of weeks, made some comments, Antonio Pierce and everyone. It's going south in a hurry in the 702, south of the Strip on the tip. The key here, though, is a conditional third that might become a second rounder, and he is headed to the New York Jets per Rap Sheet and Diana Rossini. And Davante Adams catching passes from his old buddy, Aaron Rodgers. So that was kind of the big NFL news of the morning.
It's big. I mean, it's big. They have money to pay him, and maybe there'll be a restructure that's involved or something. But the Jets, with the coaching change and Eden Prairie's Todd Downing going to offensive coordinator, he's calling the plays. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, he's running the show right now. They had pop in them last night that just overall I didn't see in totality from the Jets in the London game. So with the addition of Davante Adams, with Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard's having one of his better seasons, I still leave it. Nice play action off Breece Hall. Braylon Allen's a nice backup running back, but Aaron likes his tight ends, and he always has, whether it's Bobby Tunyon, whether it's Jermichael Finley, Aaron Rodgers, Mercedes Lewis for certain reasons, and Tyler Conklin, Western Michigan go crazy. He's a former Viking doing the best he can. When I look back at the Jets, I just think he's missing a game-changing tight end. But you go out and get Davante Adams, and you can fix things quickly like that. So when the Jets get healthy, when they get C.J. Mosley, one of the better defensive players in the game, back, and they get themselves healthy and get a little time to decompress, I wonder if this is going to be a team that's going to make a late-season charge and be en vogue in the AFC to be like, well, the Jets were working through all these things, fired the coach early, but here they come, and they've won 4 of the last 5 or 5 of the last 6, and they got this guy a quarterback. That is possible with this team because they do have the talent.
Yeah. To the NBA, I don't know how much you talked about this yesterday, PA, about that Sunday Knicks Timberwolves game.
Minimal.
And after the game,
No, we hit on that.
Yeah, how about that?
I didn't even know it happened until Maxwell brought it up.
So I saw the video of it, but then I found this from the New York Post. Suck a bleep, man.
What?
Rick Brunson.
That's what he said?
Like sucker. Yeah, just sucker.
Yeah.
Sucker bleep, man.
All right, 3-2.
Rick Brunson tells DiVincenzo after the game, I'm going to let you live, brother. And then, let me see. You talked to me, DiVincenzo said, I was talking to Tibbs. You want to bring it out here for the camera.
Wow.
So and that's Jalen's dad, right?
Yes, and an assistant coach with Tibbs.
Correct. So apparently.
And Rick was a tough customer in the NBA.
So DiVincenzo, I think this was when he was at the line late in the game. He's like, can't finish, right, Tibbs?
Yeah.
And then Brunson starts chirping at him. And DiVincenzo says, that's what happens when they let you run the show.
Yeah.
Let daddy be in charge.
Wow.
So
and then DiVincenzo after the game said it was all inside joke stuff from when he was with the Knicks. No, that ain't that's Dante's Inferno burning on the hardwood of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, he said he wasn't. It wasn't about the trade. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's all it was. I'm not there anymore. I play. I'm competitive. So my relationship with Jalen, by the way, that's my brother and best friend. That's a separate relationship. I'll talk about that privately.
Wow.
He's just absolutely stomping on his dad in the middle of a preseason game.
That's crazy.
Now, with all that said, for a team, we've talked about toughness. We've talked about you want some dogs, a couple of guys in the mix. Mm-hmm. We got ourselves a dog. Julius Randle's about to make his debut tomorrow night, I think, in the preseason game.
Sweet.
But between him and Dante, we got some dogs in the mix here.
Wow.
How about that? Some preseason trash talk.
Yeah, I can't remember this much excitement or this much fervor around a preseason game. But that's what happens when you bring the Knicks back to Madison Square Garden, playing the kitty who used to play for the Timberwolves. Emotions are high. Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, joins us around the corner on your home for Vikings football, FM 100.3, KFAN.